Yeah, so I thought I would just kind of reflect on how I'm feeling about AI in general. Um, so it it goes back probably the point to start thinking about it is June 17th, 2022, when I first presented the idea that you can take Eliezer Yudkowsky's 43 bolded statements of list of lethalities, all the ways AI is trying to kill us, and use the same attributes of AI and show how an AI utopia could be created. And then there was an article suggesting that there, in theory, should be a lot of other people promoting AI utopia, and how come Kim Solez is the only one, which is an interesting question. I think you'd have to put Sam Altman in that category as well, though, I think. And so I got to thinking, what other way can you frame it? And I think utopia is probably too strict, and a Star Trek world, not necessarily the space travel of it, but the innovation, human interaction, and general sort of technology attainment in Star Trek is probably what we're aiming for. Recent evidence I will show you has indicated that there's very interesting AI spillover. You may think that to have AI in a particular area of human endeavor, you need a specific project. But if all human society is being changed by AI, then AI is going to increase the creativity, productivity, and idea generation of every intelligent human. And that's going to have an effect even without planning a specific AI project. And also, AI is not without politics. And it turns out that ChatGPT's politics, its political beliefs, and my own are quite close. So that makes the whole thing more comfortable. And then the idea of how AI could basically help solve everything, not entirely through AI, but some of it through the threat of AI, causing humans to say, well, that's ridiculous. We can do this without AI. Let's get it done. So that is also an AI spillover effect, but not one that makes use of AI. Now, as many of you know, I was an early adopter of DALL-E 2 because of my youthful Instagram channel maintained by 25-year-old singer Mallory Chipman. I was a very early user of DALL-E 2, and in 2022 created nearly 20,000 images. But in December, I pivoted. I stopped, and I realized everybody else had caught up with me, and we weren't really getting anywhere. And there was nothing unique about what I was doing with DALL-E at that point. So I stopped. And from December 22 onwards, I've used only images created by humans. And that's all you will see in this presentation today. And then there's this interesting idea recently put forward by Kevin Kelly, that AI is changing so rapidly that there are no AI experts today. Because what we call AI today and what we will call AI 20, 30 years from now are entirely different. The experts in what will be AI in the future are not names that you know. And so any of you, if you're relatively unknown to the AI community, you could be the experts of the future, according to him, and it's a wonderful opportunity. I think that's a very interesting idea. What about my disclosures? Financially, I don't have anything, but politically there is something, you would expect that I would be lonely now, very lonely, right? Because this article suggests that this one in Paper Blog, Where Are the AI Utopians? This has a link to my video of June 17th, 2022, and saying that in theory, there would be a lot of other people talking about utopia. Why is Kim Solez the only one? But actually, Sam Altman, every time he opens his mouth, he does talk about it. And I think Stuart Russell also, he has all these slides. What happens if we succeed? They're also very positive. And the political analysis of the output of ChatGPT shows it to be sort of, progressive, democratic, liberal, tender-minded, all the things that are probably similar to my own political beliefs. So no wonder I'm feeling comfortable. I feel, befriended by all this other similarly oriented activity going on. So let's just pause for a moment and think about this statement by Sam Altman from July 2022 on Twitter. AGI is probably necessary for humanity to survive. Our problems seem too big for us to solve without better tools, and the idea is that those better tools will come with AGI. So that's kind of the essence of what I'm saying today too, and it may amaze you or stop you in your tracks that I'm describing something that is all inclusive of all human problems and saying we can solve them, and even the things that we forgot in the beginning we can solve. So this is this idea of the political beliefs of ChatGPT, and you know that there's a chat right wing, but it was only made available to the New York Times for a brief time, and that's it. You can't get it, but it is able to shift the output of ChatGPT to be favoring right-wing interests. And that's very, very interesting. Yeah, so this AI spillover, I'm trying to give you an idea of what is spilling and why. It's not only going sort of from science to politics, but also spilling into every area of human endeavor, even those without specific AI projects. That's the idea of spillover. I was happy to see with my human created images on Adobe that it's already a thing. You can get pictures of spillover and the spillover effect. So the idea is, if you take somebody who is sort of tough-minded and conservative and would ordinarily vote with the Republicans all the time and that sort of thing, and if they use ChatGPT enough, their ideas and beliefs will shift because they're constantly being fed these liberal, positive political beliefs. Yeah, so these are the 24 challenges of humanity. Marcus Hutter, well-known AI researcher originally from Australia, came up with the idea of making this all-inclusive. In other words, any challenge of humanity you might mention is in this list. Well, how can that be? It's because we have unknown unknowns and other, a lot of categories that we can stick your challenge that you think I've never heard of before into one of these existing categories. And I'm not saying that there should be or would be or will be a specific big AI project in each of these categories, but they will still be impacted by AI because human society is being impacted by AI. And I hope that there are a number of these areas of human endeavor where the active people in them realize that it's ridiculous to propose that AI fix this when obviously humans can do it, and we've known how humans can do it for a long time. It's just we always lack the will. So if we had the will, we can get this done, and that is also a kind of AI spillover effect. It's humans doing something without AI, but with the threat of AI coming in to fix something that they don't really need AI to fix. And with this spillover, then, this becomes an all-inclusive list, a self-contained project with no loose ends in the long run. All challenges can be solved eventually by either human creativity or machine creativity or both together, and at least by the time AGI comes, which is basically the same thing that Sam Altman said in that earlier quote. So we have, and you may wonder how hard these people are working for me and what kind of edicts I send them every day. And this is the easiest team to be on. I never asked them to do anything, actually. I just, every now and then they get talked about in presentations like this. Marcus Hutter, of course, has done something important here, and the rest of them are important or sort of people in waiting to go with whatever projects we decide to work on in the future. But I have new ideas every day, and I'm quite proud of that, but they generally don't come from the people you see listed there. They come from other people who are sort of feeding me those ideas. So these are sort of the adults in the room, and I'm very proud of the diversity of our team. We have indigenous people and people of color and so on, and a wide variety of subjects. And these are some of the students, and probably eventually this recording will be listened to by a lot of students. Yeah, so let's think now once again about Rich Sutton and his posting on Twitter from September 29th, 2022, called Eyes on the Prize. I think what would trouble you probably about this statement is right here where it says beyond humanity. So this is like creating smarter than human AI, going beyond human intelligence with AI. And he says whose significance is beyond humanity. But if you do that beyond humanity stuff right, if you limit the downsides of what can happen when you're beyond humanity, there are a lot of important things that humans cannot figure out the final steps towards utopia, the Star Trek world. And so particularly if you get to talking to anybody who seems quite interested in the Star Trek world about money, you quickly find that they can point you to lots of references about the Star Trek economy, but they have never read them themselves because it says that people don't use money in Star Trek, except for one race, the Ferengi, and the Ferengi are the only race in Star Trek that as you go on in time, they don't really evolve at all. So they continue to use money. No one else does. But a lot of people who are very, very interested in money today are very keen on a Star Trek future, but don't want to ever think about the fact that in Star Trek, they don't use money. So humans don't really know how to get that transition from like the stock market to not using money working, but I'm quite sure that AI and our machine brethren will be able to figure that out for us, just the way that they've been able to come up with, democratic structures and processes the humans like better than human created structures. So with machines and humans working together, we can create a great future. Yeah, and to some extent then, the beyond human part means fixing things that probably humans themselves could never fix, but in a way that benefits humans maximally. So that's how that would work. And what if we've left something out? My God, what if we completely missed something? Well, then poetry and music will catch that part. And I'm very proud of what we're doing in that realm. We've been doing this since 2016. So the students in my course, they get sort of hooked on the course, and they always need something associated with the course to do. And there's a long transition between April, when the winter course ends, and September, when the fall course begins. So we came up with the idea of the future and all that jazz, which is taking important but maybe somewhat unpleasant subjects in science and medicine, let's say, like AI safety and many other areas like that, and inserting them in poetry and music. And you can trick people into learning about those things by entertaining them for an evening with poetry and music, which they themselves provide the prompts that you end up creating poetry and music around. And it's very interesting. We did this in a very high profile event for Termis, and the international treasurer watched what we were doing that night and said, this will be a line item in the future forever. But it's a democratic organization, and that did definitely not happen. So we convinced one guy, but that really wasn't sufficient to make that happen. But if you believe the statement that music can name the unnameable and communicate the unknowable, it's a way to kind of account for and make sure we don't miss out any other subject. So it really becomes then a completely self-contained entity, end to end, with no loose ends. Yeah, and now you probably expected me to go on and on and on, but I believe this is the last slide. Yeah. So I don't know if now we should expect stunned silence or whether there will actually be questions. I hope.
How about vibrant silence?
Okay, good. Yeah, reverent silence. Yeah, no, I'll accept that. A little bit of reverent silence. But what we tell the students, and it's a common teaching in psychiatry, is that silence is very useful because it creates in people a sort of wish to have somebody speak. And what they say at that moment reveals things that they would probably never reveal in any other setting. So let's see how that works now, and what is now revealed in what you say following silence. Yeah.
Well, 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
One is I can't remember if I shared with you my paper, AI and Pathology, What Could Possibly Go Wrong?
We heard about its preparation many times.
Well,
but
anyway,
I don't think we've actually seen the final thing.
Well, I will send it along to Brad and have him send it out to the group.
Cool.
Yeah. And it ends. It's in print, and it ends with a poem by ChatGPT, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
And talks about things that you didn't mention, which is the impact of AI on replacing human skills, possibly not.
Right.
And you know, you might think, well, a lot of great thinkers say we only need to work, 3-4 hours a day or 4 hours a week. We haven't sort of transitioned to that mindset yet. And before climate change and everything else, it used to be the notion that we were suffering from too much produce. That the challenge was not feeding the world, but figuring out how to distribute all of the goodies without making people work for them. Unfortunately, I think that's changing. But I did have two other thoughts or anecdotes. One is I used ChatGPT to try to answer a science question. We've been imaging lung with our microscope and see things that haven't really been seen before, at least including distribution of capillaries inside lung alveoli. And I've never seen that. And I went and I tried to find some examples in the literature, and they're very, very few, and mostly scanning EM microscope versions. And I asked ChatGPT, are there capillaries inside the alveoli? And Chat said, no, they're not. They're on the outside, and they're involved in blood oxygenation diffusion. And I said, are you sure? I really think I see them inside. And then it said, no, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. They are seen inside. Sorry for any confusion. Which is bizarre because it not only directly contradicted itself, but apologized.
Yeah, very polite.
It is, but strange. And one wonders about as everyone else does, the quality of what's in there. And then the last thing is sort of touching on your music thing, the question of how does AI and human intelligence interact, and some people have attributed or basically made it similar to the not the conflict, but the coexistence of the conscious and unconscious mind in the human, and AI playing the role of the unconscious, which sort of comes up with answers we don't expect with reasons we don't understand, and then the conscious, the sort of the slow thinking variety where we sort of think logically and slowly about problems, and the two can work together. But also there's another question which is related to Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which is, are there truths that cannot be proved, and sort of by extension, is there knowledge or insight that cannot be generated by any algorithmically based tool, but only by the human and by the the spiritual or divine or whatever else is out there. So lots of interesting philosophical questions.
Yeah, my own feeling is that anything we can identify clearly as a something, AIs will be able to master better than we can. So, that picture of me, you may have seen, it's by internal medicine resident at the University of Montreal, Qingyan Wang. And it shows my Sony robotic robotic dog and me, and then all these swatches of color. And we argue that swatches of color is ineffable content. So things that you can't put in words, but are still important. And that's going to be a growth area, right? But don't you think there's going to be less and less of that? People will say, well, we used to regard this as ineffable, but now we have a name for it. It's this and it's that. So, yeah. And finally, when you think of all the things that AI can't do, if we say that those are the uniquely human things, and maybe they're so few and kind of small, insignificant, uniquely human things, that we need to find another way of identifying uniquely human things rather than saying, let's just look at the few things we know that AI cannot possibly do.
Well, that's true.
So
And
there
sort of
won't be much of that.
what makes us human compared to the animals. And it turns out that the more you look, the less there is. Bees teach each other. Rats giggle. All of that stuff. Once you take a closer look, it's all out there. So I think AI will follow the same path.
Yeah, and the problem is many of those very clever animals and birds have remarkably small brains. So for the size of our brain, we should be a lot cleverer than we are compared to crows and other, animals. My dog is far superior to many humans. Yeah, certainly there are senses that animals have. I mean, in our household, just to reveal a little bit, there are three of us, my wife and I and the cat, and there's no question that the cat is in charge, and all activities ultimately benefit the cat. And so as long as you understand that, then you know exactly how our home works. Yeah. Yeah, dogs are a lot better at that unconditional love stuff. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
I think I can make a comment if we're talking about
Sure.
primarily about generative models
Yes.
in this case. So yeah, you mentioned DALL-E, ChatGPT. I think it's always important to keep in mind when we're working with those types of models that they're optimized to produce believable output. So whatever they put isn't it's not necessarily correct. You can ask it, how do I get from my bedroom to my mailbox? And it will give an answer, and it will sound like you're in a house, but it will not necessarily be correct. Like all of these things they're usually told to produce an output, whether or not they're particularly confident in it. And the main thing that they're judged on is whether or not it's reasonable. Yeah, and I think that also varies compared to a lot of other AI models, which may be more in use for answering specific questions. So that general type of model, which we're just kind of given free access to lots of information and kind of letting it come up with its own solutions, that's one class of models, whereas specific applications of specific problems with machine learning, I think those are something that we have more control over. If you ask a dog how to clean throw up off the ground, you might not want to take its advice directly, but
Yeah, but one thing I should reveal maybe is how deferential to machines I was in 2022. You probably think I'm a real pushover, and you're thinking of what scam you yourself can engage me in. But yeah, everything that DALL-E 2 wanted, I provided. I tried to do searches on pig to human transplants, and it refused because pig is an insult. So I changed to using porcine. And you would think DALL-E can't spell, but I discovered that with certain searches, DALL-E was spelling for me perfectly, as long as I had things that I think it's probably trying to promote, like world peace, human cooperation. If you include mainly those ideas in your search, then it can suddenly provide properly spelled text, which was really amazing. I think that's some months back, maybe 6 months back. So it probably is not something that you can still see today. But not a single behavioral change that I underwent because DALL-E wanted me to do it during this period when I was. So you may wonder how much time I actually spent. So I would say one, pathologist workday might be 9 hours. And that's what I spent to do those 17,000 images, because of course you can get like 3 every 4 seconds, right? So even 17,000 images does not take much human time if you're sort of efficient with it. But my life didn't suffer in any way. I was not socially ostracized. Nobody accused me of being, machine proxy, non-human person. None of that bad stuff happened. And yet I changed a lot of things so that my repetitive prompts were more and more successful at getting me the images that I wanted. And I slavishly followed what DALL-E 2 wanted. So, and probably even back then it had, liberal, democratic, tender-minded kind of background tendencies in terms of its own politics. Yeah. So do any of you feel that you've changed, that your behavior has changed through interacting with generative AI, or am I the only traitor to the human race here? See, no one is volunteering the information that they've changed
Well,
anything. Okay, well, that's cool that the rest of you remain absolutely rigid, that your human behavior is unalterable and no stupid machine is ever going to get you to change anything. I'm good with that, and I'm glad to know such upright human people. Yeah.
Well,
Except
I'll add something. I keep trying to use these like the chat bots, and of course we were using DALL-E and everything, but I mean I keep trying to use them and I'm disappointed that they aren't. I mean, seems like everyone's so amazed how it sounds like human language and everything, but I'm always disappointed that it isn't more human. I guess I'd rather just chat with a real human, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, what
and I'm like trying to push the machine to do something, and it's like, oh, sorry, I can't do that. Oh, sorry, I can't. Maybe it's because it's blocked in this way, because of the potential dangers or something. But I'm always disappointed in in the responses, and I'm not getting anything that useful out of it. I mean, sometimes there's some things that are kind of useful, but I always end up, maybe I'm just not, and I think, well, maybe I'm just not asking the right questions.
how does that compare with talking to residents?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just want to add, I don't know if other people saw, there was I think New York Times opinion piece by Noam Chomsky recently talking about, the language, and that I'm also interested in linguistics, and, how the language, it replicates human language, but it comes at it in such a different way. And I think that opinion, that little article was, really reflected, I guess, why I had been disappointed, because I was asking the same kinds of, ethical questions in chat GPT or Bing or something like that, and getting, essentially the same answers as they were showing. Whenever I ask a question, it's like it just gives you the same answer. But anyway,
so
interesting.
One of the things that I have found, now I keep telling people I'm using only human generated AI, but if you look, for instance, in Adobe stock, most of their images there are generated by generative AI. So how am I able to use? I'm able to tell the difference, and I recognize that my tastes have changed, just like that link in my second slide. So in 2022, I obviously preferred the attributes of generative AI images, which are generally that there's so many components here that to pay a human artist to do that is like beyond your pay scale. You can never do it, right? And so now I can immediately tell when the number of components or renditions or the time you need to render the thing again or something goes beyond what you would ever do with a human created image. I can obviously tell that. So when I look at a group of images, I automatically know which ones are generative AI and which aren't. And I've taught myself that I no longer like the generative AI ones because that fits my politics of 2023, although it's not Kim Solez in mid 2022 when I was so proud of my Instagram channel that got me to Dolly 2 before other positions. And yeah, wow, that would just seem so important at the time. But that's not how I feel about it now.
Oh, I wonder about, like as Lynn mentioned about the ones that have the guardrails on them, especially like in China where they have, I think even more guardrails I heard, put on there because of the political and security concerns. And so a lot of times it answers, that it cannot answer because of safety concerns. Are putting all those, will those AI algorithms be less effective or less?
No, I don't think that's the way to look at it. This pausing that has been proposed, not going beyond GPT-4, OpenAI isn't doing anything beyond GPT-4. They are still working on exactly what you're talking about. The guardrails, getting fewer incorrect responses and making things safer and so on. And they can only do that with the whole world using GPT-4, so that they're getting a lot of examples of things that they still need to modify and fix. So they're engaged full time in that. So at least that's their stated response to this pause. They haven't signed the letter, but they're also not impacting that it would stop them doing anything that they're currently doing. Because actually the first person to say that there should at some point be a pause where we sort of reflect was Sam Altman. He made that statement. So the letter simply proposes doing what he proposed a long time ago. So if you think about, I mean, it probably sounds stupid making things safer, making things better, but what he points out is that has always been the way that it works. In other words, it's not a sort of diversion to make things safer because it does make things better. It makes people more comfortable using the thing and so on. So the two go hand in hand. User satisfaction and user safety are closely linked.
Something that Sam and Richard mentioned to me made me think about, like it needs to come up with a better way of conveying certainty. Like when we're speaking, we have ways of saying we're not as sure, we sound hesitant. And I
Right.
think Richard said that, about the capillaries in the lung, or Sam was mentioning about, it's supposed to come up with believable results, but how does it convey certainty? Could there be a meter on each response, or, since it's not speaking, it doesn't have that the verbal or the visual cues if you're not seeing the person. So, I think it needs to come up with a way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about certainty and AI predictions. There's a lot of work that actually investigates causal relationships and stuff using deep learning with mixed success in a lot of different ways, mostly because we have a kind of a predetermined expectations of what we kind of want when we ask to determine how certain it is of a certain conclusion. A lot of it goes back to a lot of Bayesian modeling of causality. This given this, what do we know, and how confident are we in that solution? And it really goes back to initial model architecture design and how you decide to optimize that model. You can penalize it for making really bad decisions. You can penalize it for being wrong in any way whatsoever, or you can modify how much you influence the training based on how correct, how close a prediction is to being kind of accurate. And there's a lot of different ways that we can accomplish that.
It's awesome. Yeah. I have another question. Sorry to ask so many, but one thing I was wondering, is there a sort of reverse Dolly sort of like thing where you can put it? I know that Google has a thing you can put an image and it'll find that on the internet, but like a reverse Dolly that would actually convert the picture to words, and as they say, the picture's worth 1,000 words. And I also think about pathology images. Like I know that obviously a lot of people in our group are working on AI projects in pathology, but how far along do you think we are in getting like a sort of an overall general reverse image search, basically?
Yeah, I did that a few summers ago with a summer student, and TinEye, there are a number of other entities that do that. But what excites me is really reverse engineering pathology, and that isn't possible yet because there are not large language models with sort of labeled, pathology. But there will be soon, I think. And then if you describe a patient with a certain condition, then just like in radiology now, you can come up with a fake radiograph that shows you exactly what a radiograph would look like, but it's not from any patient. It's totally generated from the model of what X-rays are. So we would have the same thing, a model of what kidney biopsy histology is. And just by describing something, you would be able to come up with a pretty good representative picture of that thing that is not close to any actual biopsy, but that the computer made up on the fly. And what I said at the Banff meeting is that by the Paris Banff meeting that will exist. We'll have to see if I'm right. So let's say by September, October 2024 that we would have that. And it's something that there's strong resistance to. Some very prominent people in kidney medicine and kidney pathology just shake their heads and their jaws clench when I talk about this. And I can tell that until we actually show it to them, they just don't want to think a single second about reverse generating, histologic appearances. That just their brain doesn't go there. Yeah.
It's a really interesting type of prompt. For example, like if we have an image and we say, what will this image look like in 6 months? Like, that's kind of, it's a really interesting way to kind of envision, like, this is what we want the model to be able to do. We want it to be able to show us like something qualitative like that. And it will return something that it thinks will be most believable. But those are the kind of things that it would be very useful, and it could possibly only be accomplished using machine learning.
Yeah, well, you remember that famous chalkboard after death left. If we couldn't create it, then we understand, or if we cannot create it, we do not understand it. So I think once we're able to reverse generate histologic pictures, we will understand all sorts of things about how, pathology actually works that we don't currently understand today. It's just beyond where our minds can go.
Well, any other comments or questions? Those are great.
Yeah, I'm glad that there was nobody who was bitterly disappointed by the presentation. Of course, this is not as practical as any of the other presentations we've had here. You can't go directly from what I've given you and do real stuff in the world, but it's sort of bigger picture and overarching. And yeah,
I guess
we have a pitch session called Discovery Lab every few months, and I'm going to pitch this again there and sort of see what happens locally.
well, I think we can keep thinking about how we could apply some of this to the digital pathology working group of Banff, and maybe it could even be a nice little collaborative project that we could do something sort of like you were doing with the Dolly images.
Yeah. Well, it's important to be able to pivot. I mean, think what happened to me in December, to realize something you've pursued with great energy is obviously right now at this moment not getting anywhere, right? And it would be much more helpful to the people you're interacting with to stop doing it entirely and do something different. So it's amazing. I have I don't know, a group of about 8,000 contacts, I guess, worldwide in all different disciplines. When I did that, some of the most intelligent people out there noticed say, did I offend you in some way? But it didn't seem like I offended you. It seems like something else happened there. On a certain day, you just changed and we didn't get any more versions of that paper. And so did you sort of cut me out of the will? Or I said, no, that paper is frozen in time. I'm not going to throw it out. All those thousands of images still exist, but it doesn't make sense to proceed with it now. This is just not the right point in time. And thinking about Dolly images as giving you tastes of AGI, which is what we were talking about back then, it is really stupid when we realize we're so much closer to AGI now. And none of those Dolly images gave me any pointers to even the situation we're in now today. On March 30th, 2023, it couldn't even predict that, let alone the broader, bigger future. So, and there's a kind of humbleness about that, right? I mean, we need to be prepared to be humble, not only about our own behavior vis-a-vis other humans, but that sometimes we're venturing into an area that humans just have very few skills to succeed in, but machines will ultimately help us in those areas.
Well, that was really interesting. It sparked a lot of thought and nice comments from everyone's, and in the chat too, especially. And so we can all continue to think about how we can apply this in Banff and beyond. And Any last comments?
Yeah.
I think
Well,
I'll see y'all in 2 weeks, and let me know if you can have anyone you want to speak or anything like that. We can try to work them in.
yeah, why don't you send me the video from today?
Yeah.
There is a fair amount of interest out there in the world, so.
Yeah. I'll send
Great.
you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, for being such a patient and interactive audience.
Yeah, great
Alright,
session. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
great session. Thank you all so much. Yeah, y'all take care. Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.